Welcome to the final class in Jay Levin's Life Mastery Basics course. The subject today is self-nurturing. In concluding the course, Jay guides you through a stronger sense of self, your unique and phenomenal potential in the world, and into very specific ways to understand and nurture the core elements of yourself.
Welcome to Class 12, the last class in the Life Mastery Basics series. Our subject today is self-nurturing, something that tends to elude us or that we handle peripatetically or unevenly, for which there's a fair amount to be learned about how to do it comprehensively. So I want to start off by taking people into a guided meditation, and it's one in which I'm going to ask you just to be very receptive to what I'm sharing with you. So make yourself comfortable, get relaxed, close your eyes. Good. Be aware of the emptiness around you. Be aware that everything is existing by filling an emptiness. So feel yourself as a being filling an emptiness. There's an emptiness, and there are the beings and the objects filling that emptiness. So, good. Now experience yourself as a presence in that emptiness that has the capacity of expression. In other words, whatever you do creates expressiveness, almost as like you're an art piece. Anything you do fills that emptiness in some way. Creates an energy field, it creates a story. You're there creating into this emptiness. You're in your body creating into this emptiness. You walk across the room, you've created movement into the emptiness. You sit down, you've created a different kind of movement. You write something, you've created a movement. You talk to someone, you relate to someone, you put your arm around someone, you've created something in this emptiness. So you are an expression of an intelligence, a set of emotions that's relating to this emptiness and creating something that is usually changing, if not always changing. You're doing different things in any given moment. So you have a choice of filling this emptiness, being in this emptiness in full expression of your creativity, your best ideas, your lovingness, or you have a choice of being in this emptiness with a sense of drama and tension and bad moods, whatever negative aspects of life you can imagine. You're filling the emptiness, one or the other. So obviously it's more fun and a better experience and a more enjoyable experience to be filling the emptiness with your creativeness, with your expressions of the things you like to do, the things that are gifted, naturally gifted to you, the things where you're feeling in service to other people or in service to the whole, or you're just being playful and you're feeling healthy in it, and you've got a good mind and good mindset in this emptiness. And the trauma is not dominant. Your trauma from childhood and your idealized self, that's not dominant. You're just here being and expressing and enjoying, right? Thinking out, how am I going to fill this emptiness in any given moment that's satisfying? So if you hold onto an image of that you are filling an emptiness in some creative form, you were created from something, you begin to see that, in fact, what you are is co-creating a whole sensibility, a whole world. You're co-creating a whole reality that other people respond to. You're not just an isolated figure. You are filling an emptiness with reality that other people are going to have to respond to. The world's, things are going to shift. Even if you move a piece of furniture across the room, you've changed the emptiness into something else. One of the core ideas of self-nurturing is to make yourself feel like an artist, a self-nurturing artist in this emptiness. That's what you like, every moment. What are you doing in every moment that's creative, filling this emptiness? Okay? So to fill this emptiness most creatively and most fulfillingly, obviously if you're in alignment with the gifts you've been given and your own knowing self, it's going to be a better experience and a richer experience than if you're just there filling it, you know, the actions and the movements and the thought forms are filled with your trauma and your drama and all the things we've been talking about and working on healing in the previous 11 classes. So what does it take, what's a final component we can add to this idea of filling this emptiness creatively that we haven't covered in the last 11 classes? So I want to suggest that it's a deeper level of nurturing every element of being in this place, every element of yourself that allows you to be in this place, to fill this emptiness most creatively, most playfully. So when you wake up in the morning, you think, how am I going to fill the emptiness today? Rather than I'm stuck in this routine, where am I at liberty to fill this emptiness with something that's warm, positive, good experience for myself and others? So that doesn't happen automatically. You know, it happens because you've decided to do it. You've made that sort of life stance, right? And you want to take every measure you can learn. You're a learning being. Primarily, you're a learning being. You want to take every measure you can learn to be in the inner shape inside yourself to express yourself creatively. So what does that mean? It means you want your psyche to be in good shape. You want your body to be in good shape. You want your relationships to be in good shape. You want your soul to be free to express and open to its own expression. You want to create an outer space around you that's comforting and pleasant. And you want to make sure your inner space is allowing for your knowingness, your deeper knowingness, not your reactive mind, but your deeper knowingness to be guiding you, have authority. So imagine yourself then filling this open space with a healthy psyche, healthy body, healthy relationships as your goal, healthy expression of your soul, creative outer space around you, and a openness acting on your own deeper knowingness. Okay. So now that you've got this sense of not being a victim of the world, but being a creative presence in the world, filling the space co-creatively, it's like we were on this big tableau of let's get born and co-create a universe and play in it we would enjoy, and this expression of ourselves, and knowing that that's in any given moment we're co-creating. Open your eyes, and let's start looking at the elements of self-nurturing that allow you to really be a phenomenal co-creator. Okay? So let's have a little feedback from the class here, about what you might have experienced in doing that exercise.
It was a very pleasant experience. It was very pleasant. Saw myself very, very bright, very light, and creating a lot of beauty. And in this world, a lot of flowers, a lot of positivity, a lot of light. It's a very pleasant experience.
Cool.
I also saw how my life is playing out right now, which does not necessarily, or I'm not creating all this light. So it was interesting to see and note and be aware that another reality is possible.
So had you ever experienced that state of mind before?
I have in parts.
In parts, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Probably way more abstract parts.
Right. So it's not easy to come to because we're so trained in saying, okay, how am I going to, the world's going to hit me with this or this or this or this today, and how can it be, what are the tasks I have to get through today, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
So it's a different mindset. It's definitely a different mindset of, I'm a player. I am a real player. So what do I want to, how do I want to play? Do I want to play on a game of drama or frustration, or I want to play with the other co-creators in the world and creating something that's a little bit more easy and fun rather than dramatic and tense and fear-filled and, judgmental, et cetera, right? So cool. That's good. Okay,
So I experienced basically just a sense of openness, and for me it was very similar because I meditate daily, and so for me it was just like going in that space, but also with more the framework of actually being an artist in your own life and having that feeling of just this blank tableau of infinite possibilities in which you can just create whatever you want, and having that choice every day, every moment we have that choice of what we want to create. So for me it was just very positive and an optimistic feeling.
Oh, good. Excellent. Excellent. And did you also feel that the potential of working from this state of mind more consistently?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Because it's still slightly different than meditation, because it's more this feeling of I'm really going to create something and bring that into the world. So I think it's slightly different than just sitting in like an emptiness kind of meditation. It's more like with the creative aspect.
Yeah, it's definitely different, yeah. Because meditation is really meant to integrate and to open you to a space where you can sort of enter a higher level of knowingness, because you're turning off the chattering mind, ideally, so you're calming down and you can have visions from that point of view. This is meant to say, even if I'm meditating, I'm here and filling this empty space, and meditation is one of my self-nurturing processes, and I'm not going to sit here meditating all day long. So what kind of player do I want to be? How am I going to take that forward and say, okay, here's my adventure.
In the next segment, Jay teaches the ideas and methods of nurturing your psyche as one of your core elements. He also describes the best techniques for nurturing your body, which is another core element.
So now we want to look at the elements of self-nurturing that I mentioned during the meditation. And the first one is psyche. And let me explain what I mean by psyche. Psyche is both what we know of as our mind and what we also, but in this case, I'm also including our knowingness. So it's a combination of the brain material and our deeper knowingness. So what's the most obvious thing you can say about psyche that's meaningful? One is that it's highly responsive to input, right? So if you do nothing but watch violent movies all day, or you watch porn all day, then that's one form of input that's shaping the psyche. If you educate yourself on a variety of different levels about matters that are interesting to you, matters that keep enhancing your career, if you become the sort of permanent student of the world, you're putting a different kind of energy into your psyche. Not just into your brain, but into your psyche, meaning you're providing a larger field for your knowingness to operate in, because you can take your knowingness into many different fields, and therefore you're enriching your experience of being in this space, of filling the space, being co-creative in the space. What else supports psyche? Healthy experiences with other people, sharing, looking into other people's wisdom, taking yourself into nature, opening yourself to the arts, music, all kinds of playfulness, non-harmful playfulness are good for the psyche, they're balancing. Enjoying poetry, allowing yourself to experience poetry you like, that's good for the psyche. The psyche thrives on multidimensional experiences. It thrives on being able to have an experience in the world where you're not just passive, but you're relating to other people, or you're relating to ideas. You're not holding on to any sense of, I gotta be right, but you're willing to learn, be open, exchange thought forms, and, fill the space here with a search for larger truths. That's good for psyche. So psyche is consciousness and unconsciousness combined. It's not just the things you're aware of, it's putting the energetic fields into your system that allow for a healthier unconscious, right? So good psyche is also, therefore, doing work on yourself to heal your traumas. So the larger point here is that you are responsible as you move through filling the space for the experiences you're going to have and the input you're going to take in. It's your choices. So if you want to have the richest experience of being co-creative in this dimension, then in fact you're going to want to enrich your psyche in every way possible. You're going to say, what am I doing today to enrich my psyche, rather than just drudge through the day or feel a victim through the day? What am I doing today to open myself up? Healing psyche and expanding psyche can include meditation, though that alone is not psyche. Doing meditations that will expand your sense of your extrasensory perception, your intuition self, that's helping your psyche. It's giving you a richer experience as you're filling the co-creative space. New ideas will come to you. So another element of psyche is creativity. It's not just the input, there's also the output. So what of your creative urges are you following or suppressing, right? To expand psyche, to really nurture psyche and nurture yourself, when you have creative impulses, you want to paint, you want to write, whatever it is, you want to create space, great spaces for people. Healthy psyche, nurturing, requires you actually to step forward, express that. Every expression of creativity is infinitely nurturing to your psyche. So again, as our first element of self-nurturing in this space, I want to encourage you to make a very firm commitment to saying, I'm going to nurture my psyche. I'm going to be aware of what I put into it, and I'm going to be aware of how I express it, and it's going to be a deliberate plan. It's going to be a real conscious intent to go forward and break habits if I need to that are not serving me, and put myself on a path of nurturing my psyche. So as an exercise now, make a headline on your page, says psyche, and list some things, half a dozen things, up to half a dozen things. You can expand this later, but list half a dozen things right now that you can think of while you're focusing here that you could do without a lot of stress in your life to nurture your psyche, both on the intake and the expressive level. Things that would be very helpful to you. And again, the rule is don't overwhelm yourself. Don't choose to do more things than you can do. Once you make the list, start one at a time, integrate them. Make a list that you think be really valuable to you. Good. Okay, now you've got your DVDs and tapes back on. Let's talk about body. This is easy, right? If you're stuffing yourself full of unhealthy foods, the Big Mac diets and things like that, you're setting yourself up for a weak body, right? If you're aware of what you put into your body and you're aware of how you use your body, then you're nurturing your body and you're nurturing your sustainability, and you're actually also nurturing your good moods. So the elements of good body health are rampant in the culture, and about 25% of us, 25% of us are pretty mindful of them and doing that, and about 75% of us are pretty sloppy about it. And thus the high rates of heart disease, huge rate of obesity in this country. So this is how you're filling the space. And it takes a discipline and a will to move in a different direction and an intent to move in a different direction. So running down again what's necessary. Body, if you don't know your food allergies and eating, get a blood test, find an applied kinesiologist, find out your food allergies. A good general book is Eat to Your Blood Type. That actually is, I found to be pretty accurate. If you haven't been tested for heavy metals in your system, for mold, for parasites, once every 2-year basis, get yourself tested. Get those cleaned out of your system, free up your energy. If you're not doing cleanses, do cleanses. Nurture the health of your body and watch the food intake. Some of us need more protein than others. Some of us always eat carbs, rather, with some protein. Don't eat carbs alone. It's a good rule. Try to keep your body balance slightly alkaline. If you're heavily acidic, and you can buy the little pH papers at the drugstore, heavily acidic, you want to bring that down. Avoid acidic foods. Take a cheapest thing in the world, healing ingredient in the world is a little bicarbonate soda, a teaspoon a day. Start turning you alkaline. So these are body awarenesses. There's plenty of it out there for you to discover what keeps good body health. Movement and exercise are crucial. So find the exercise forms that you love most, that give you the most pleasure, yoga, tennis, whatever it is. Get the heart pumping 3-4 times a week heavily for at least 20 minutes. Move stuff through you. And free-form movement, dancing and free-form movement are phenomenal allies of not only the body, but the psyche and the spirit. I think it's in Conscious Loving they refer to a fellow who's 83 years old, who's well known in the world, who spends an hour a day dancing, and he looks like he's 50. He just moves the stuff through him all the time. He just keeps his spirit free. So free-form dancing is excellent. When you're tight, you're not in good shape. In Aboriginal cultures, they're always moving. We in the West don't do that, but the bodies are always moving. They're aligned with spirit. Try spirit yoga. Spirit yoga is where you're completely at ease, and you just see what gentle inner forces guide you to move rather than try to have your mind control what moves. So I don't do yoga. I do some Tai Chi. I don't do deep yoga on a regular basis. So I don't get into those complicated yoga positions. My body's not there. But if I do spirit yoga, where I really surrender and I've been taken into these phenomenal body positions that I would think, well, my leg can't cross over my other leg that way, and there it is. I'm cross over my other leg that way. So elements of movement are really important in healing body. You want to say, I'm going to nurture my body every way I can, and food, movement, exercise are nurturing of the body. Touch is phenomenally nurturing of the body. Regular massages. If you're not in a relationship, allowing yourself to be with your friends, even friends of the other gender, in ways where you're hugging and you're touching and you're comforting each other in that way. Very healing for the body. Very healing for actually the spirit as well. So the next exercise that I want you to do is now write down the word body and make a list of a half a dozen ways that you're willing to move towards, that you give yourself the intention of moving towards, to enhance and nurture your body so it can be in a better place to be co-creative as you're filling the space here.
Coming up, Jay discusses the proper use of relationships and friendships as yet another core element of self-nurturing.
Okay, if you finish that list, that's good. So now we're going to look at relationships. Relationships have a number of components. Relationships are not just your primary relationships, it's relatingness itself, which we've been focusing on in the past classes. But relationships are a fundamental part of self-nurturing. Healthy relationships will allow you to be in balance in the world. Healthy relatingness will allow you to feel present, feel that, in fact, you're having an experience of life that has an underlying sense of confidence and infinite possibilities. These are pretty basic, obvious truths. So what does it take to, beyond what we've already taught in the early classes, to nurture relationships? Well, first of all, you have to find people you want to be in relationship with, right? A lot of people feel that their friends and family members, as they know them, often provide difficult relationships. The mental state one approaches difficult relationships with is, here's an opportunity for me to heal myself and to offer some healing for another person. Here's an opportunity for me to handle a situation not from my fight or flight place, but from a different set of tools, so that I'm filling the space as a learning, exchanging being who's also creating a different space between people. By greenlighting that, by making that an adventure towards your difficult relationships and those that you're not ready to say, out of my life here, but by consciously doing that and thinking of it as self-nurturing, you're doing this to nurture yourself, and at the same time, you're helping other people. You're helping the people around you by demonstrating a different role model, by opening a space to them where they can feel safer to come out of their stance, defense, reactivity. And so all the work we've been doing on relationships, to repeat, and nonviolent communication is profoundly self-nurturing. So if you're going to enter a self-nurturing mindset of, I'm here to co-create, and my expansion of my co-creation comes from my self-nurturing, then there's another reason to say my self-nurturing encompasses healing my relationships, healing my way of being in relatedness. A question that comes up often that I've come across in classes, people say, well, you know, I'd like to make a better set of friends. My friends are kind of stifling. We get into these old patterns with each other. Sometimes I feel they're using me. Sometimes I feel they're not really there for me. So this is an important element of relationships. And one of the things I've learned is that as people do the work on themselves and they heal, they often bring their friends along with them because you're setting root models and you are opening space. Or that friendships transform and you become something of a teacher to your old friends, right? And you may be just a temporary teacher or you may be a long-term teacher. But you're in a slightly different role, and they can feel awkward at first. And it's one of the ways in which you have to learn to set self-nurturing with the idea that if you're really nurturing yourself, right, the old patterns are going to fall away. You're going to enter a space that anthropologists call the liminal space. In Kabbalah healing, it's known as the Bardo. It's a space that Native Americans know as the initiation space. We've all heard the word initiation. It's a transitional space between you've been in this place, and these are the mechanisms you're using. You haven't fully grown into being this other person who's being the real you that's got all these. And there's transitional passages. And you can feel very vulnerable and alone and isolated during these transitional passages. So self-nurturing in these transitional parents, it just becomes really important. And patience becomes really important. Faith and trust become really important. Because the temptation of the machine is to pull you back and to play games and to codepend in the old ways with the relationships you're in, rather than trust, deal with any emotional turbulence that comes up with the emotional mastery tools, and allow yourself time to be an initiation space. An initiation space is where the unknown is facing you, right? But you have faith enough in what you're newly creating, and your intention is strong enough that you'll keep moving forward anyway, even if there's levels of discomfort. And we've taught you lots of tools to deal with the discomfort. So one of the elements, therefore, in this transition period of self-nurturing is opening to new friends and methods of doing it. And an easy way to do that is to imagine what interests you haven't explored that you'd like to explore, and who else is interested in those fields, right? So you can find online, you can find societies of all kinds that have, salons and meeting groups around subject area interests. You can find all kinds of groups online or Facebook or wherever you want that have subject areas where you find shared interests. And I want to encourage you to not be afraid to step up into what seems to be, more sophisticated gatherings of people who may be slightly better educated than you in some field, because people do like to mentor, and they do like to give to another person. And you might just find your mentors become some of your best friends as you learn, as you move along. As you become more aware spiritually, psychologically, more of your wisdom comes forward, then you're going to naturally want to gravitate towards finding wisdom circles or groups of people who are functioning from those same wisdom areas, whether they're assembled formally as a study group or a church or a group of creative lecturers around people who have their own following. Those are good ways to meet new people. And I'm sure if you put a little creativity to it and break out of your mold and just ask yourself the question of what have I not explored to meet new people, we can go there. So in relatingness issues and relationship issues, we're working on improving the quality of our relationships with relationship skills. We're looking at expanding our field of relationships and friendships so that we're matching up with people with like interests and like co-creativity. And a third area of relationships is service work. In other words, your relationships to the world where you're actually in service. And some of the most wonderful self-nurturing components of life are to be in service and to find out what it feels like to be assisting another human being in some way who clearly needs help. You're not enabling them, but you're helping them. Or you're working for some cause and developing friendships around that and allies around the cause you care about. These are valuable human interactions that you're filling the space in a way that is beyond belief self-nurturing. And so you're in the space, filling it in a way that is self-nurturing in a manner that you need to experience if you haven't done it, to see how rich you become inside yourself and how your sense of being able to co-create in the world and your confidence expands because you've had this experience of being able to be in service to another human being who needs a service. So that's an essential component of self-nurturing. So the exercise now, therefore, is to write down relationships and relating as your headline, and think of a half a dozen ways you can step up your game in the world of relatingness and relationships that would be completely self-nurturing to you, that'll expand you, expand your sense of life, expand your sense of the opportunities that life presents. Remember, the whole meaning of self-nurturing is essentially of organizing your life, not from a sense of lack, but from a sense of phenomenal opportunity presented to fill this space, day-to-day space, moment-by-moment space, something that's expressive, creative, and nurturing to the world and nurturing to yourself.
In the next segment, Jay looks at areas of yourself and your inner life that hold rich potential for you and are often ignored or undervalued.
So let's take a look at the next element of self-nurturing. It's what I call the inner space, your knowingness, and your soul simultaneously. So one of the components of nurturing the inner self is the idea of kindness to yourself, the ridiculous idea that you matter in the world and you want to be as kind to yourself as you would want to be to the sweetest human being you've ever met or the person who most needed kindness you ever met and were drawn to. Right? And this runs counter to our victim-perpetrator matrix. It runs certainly counter to our inner critic, because we've already learned there's no friend of ours. We can easily do without it. So kindness to yourself embodies a number of elements. Most of them you've already learned in the previous 11 courses, mastering those areas in which you're expanding yourself, you're nurturing yourself, you're finding good recreation. But I want to add another dimension to this idea of kindness to yourself. And that's the thought that every day there's a conscious intent to find some way that you find is truly going to be nurturing in the moment that you haven't explored before. Something where it could take 5 minutes, but something where you're going to give yourself the gift of breaking the pattern a little bit, opening a new door a little bit, or something that you know is truly comforting yourself, a certain meditation, a walk, moving your body in a certain way. Obviously, we're talking about this as an overall pattern and an overall plan. And within the context of a day, you can find some other special little way to be self-nurturing and kind to yourself. So kindness to yourself also means allowing yourself the space to practice being in your knowingness, in your higher self, in your inner self. So that usually can be just some sort of meditation, or it can just mean some solitude, where you give yourself a chance to sit quietly or take a quiet walk, or whatever it is that allows you to move into a space inside yourself where you can get the larger picture, where you can see the larger picture, where you can bring yourself down out of the fury of the mind and allow yourself to experience a calmer sense of the nature of reality. And if you're using the tools we've taught in earlier classes, you're going to be more and more open to that anyway, because you're going to be actually bringing down the temperature of the emotional temperature and the self-talk temperatures, velocity, and you'll more naturally be in that space. But a good exercise for doing this is to sit quietly and ask yourself, what do I know about a situation that I haven't paid attention to yet? And just wait to see what answers come forward. What can I say about a situation? What do I know about this person I haven't paid attention to? What are the good qualities of this situation that I'm missing? What are the good qualities of this person that I'm not paying attention to? That's expanding your knowingness. When you're getting quiet and getting yourself out of reactivity, you can expand your knowingness into dimensions of psychic awareness that will surprise you. So you just allow yourself to be quiet, be in a room, feel completely present in a room, feel completely connected to everything in the room, and just then from that point of feeling really connected, let your mind drift off to a place where it's asking questions about situations and people from a positive frame of mind. Just tell me what I need to know here. Tell me the real essence of what's going on here. And trust what comes forward. If you were to pick a friend, as we did in one of the early classes, if you remember that, on a daily basis, rather than just on the one time we did it, and share with them your sense of their good qualities. You say, I want to say this to you. I love these qualities about you. They're really good. And you'll find yourself identifying qualities you didn't begin to have in your mind's eye until you focus on this person and let that information come forward. You can do that with perfect strangers and surprise them at your sense of who they are if you're focusing on what are their good qualities that are not being mentioned. And by the way, it's a good self-nurturing practice in the course of a day as kindness to yourself is to set it up with people, tell me some good qualities about me you like, Tell me some things about me. Share with me. Give me a little hit here, right? Find the languaging that feels comfortable for you. Get over the embarrassment barrier, because the embarrassment barrier is the old matrix where you're in defense and you're not sharing and everybody's hiding everything. See if you can create with your friends and family and people around you and even people you meet to say, I have this little game. I like to hear people tell me what my good qualities are. Silly as it may sound, right? As I express it that way, I promise you, frame it, just trust yourself to say it in a way that it will seem organic and natural to the person and the situation. It'll come out right. More than not, many times more than not, it'll come out right. Don't be afraid of a little awkwardness. Asking for things in the world, as we learned in earlier classes, is really important. So nurturing the inner self also requires a certain kind of recreation. We've talked about recreation as play, fun, etc., and building in recreation periods in your work life. So it's good to identify those particular kinds of recreations that at the end of it, you feel better about yourself. You feel more alive in the world. You just feel groovier. And often it's not the most passive recreations, right? It's not just going to, some great concert, some great blowout concert. So look for recreation areas in which, in fact, at the end of it, you feel higher. You feel cooler, higher. You feel more confident in the world. You feel more expanded in the world. So this is conscious work. In other words, you've got choices to make in life and how you're going to spend it and what you're going to fill the space with. So all of this, again, it's just saying, I'm going to fill the space. I'm going to concretely rethink how I'm filling the space and move towards, piece by piece, filling the space with things that are going to nurture one or another aspect of myself. And of course, we want to make sure we're nurturing all aspects of yourself. So in these meditations that you're looking for awareness of other people, you want to also ask yourself, listen to yourself about yourself, in the sense that, not your critic, but you want to activate your sense of who you are from your own good list of goals. So it's looking at where you've had recent successes. It's saying to yourself, what is actually in my best interest, my highest best interest in the situations I've got in front of me, and listening to that answer. And not the fear-based, I'm afraid I'll lose this, because when you're in that fear place, you're not nurturing yourself. When you're acting on the fear place, what if I do this or this? It's like, if I think that I'm going to be protected no matter what does my higher self suggest about the way to move in this? What does my knowing self suggest about my way to move in this, right? So it takes specific intent to allow the time for that, to make the space for that. Another area of nurturing the inner self is spirituality and soul. It's where you're allowing yourself to be in surrender to the idea that there's a higher level of connectedness. And you've got your goddesses, you've got gods, you've got Buddha, you've got all kinds of forms of religious experience. And seeking the one that's most natural to you is important, because it's simply a pathway to a sense of the higher connectedness. It's where you feel more connected to the world. You know, for many people, the divine is most present in nature, so they spend a lot of time in nature and they feel most connected, and they come back into the matrix feeling renewed and stronger, and with more distance from the matrix, better to be able to use tools that help heal the matrix and not be a victim of the matrix. So finding the fundamental connection to higher purpose and higher self is self-nurturing. It's nurturing of the soul. And of course, as we've learned from the earliest classes, the deepest nurturing of the soul is to have a vision for your life that you're in alignment with and be in expression with that. So if you didn't develop one in the finances class, keep working at it. You want to be expressing your fundamental nature in every way you can. Expression becomes soul food in that case. Another element of when you're focusing on inner self is look for areas where you can say, I want to be liberated in this area. It may be liberated from some inner noise that's bothering you, some inner criticism, or maybe some aspect of your life you want to be liberated from, gently liberated from. And you'll ask in your quiet times for that vision of yourself and the ways to get there that shows you in your most liberated form. And liberated doesn't mean free of all responsibility, because you're constantly responsible for you and your interactions in the world. So it's not escape from responsibilities that are crucial to your existence. It's escape from those ways of carrying out your responsibilities that don't lead to any healing, and that in fact are diminishing your energy rather than allowing constant expression of that energy. So if you're in a job that's draining your energy, and that job is not in alignment with your vision of yourself, you're not nurturing your inner self. So, okay, now, make a headline called Inner Self, and list a half a dozen new ideas or fresh ideas or recommitments that are possible for you for nurturing your inner self, expanding your nurturing of your inner self.
Jay in the next segment describes what you can do with your outer space as the final core element of self-nurturing, and he also teaches how to best identify and overcome your specific inner blocks to self-nurturing behavior.
Okay, so there's one other area we want to touch on, and that's nurturing your outer space. And what does that mean? Outer space is the environment you keep around you. So it means what your home is, feels like, how you dress in the world, and how you are in either adding to the decline and decay of the Mother Earth that provides us with everything, or how you are in nurturing that larger home you live in. A lot of us give over-attention, if it's from our ego sense, to the material world around us. And some of us, in reaction to that, say, you know, I'm not going to go near that. I've got higher pursuits than the material world around me. And some of us are just slobs. We're indifferent to it. So I'm going to suggest that in terms of your healthy expression in the world, where your psyche is fully integrated and resonant with your inner and outer experiences and with your co-creativity in the world, requires a certain careful amount of awareness of how your outer space should be. So what does that mean in terms of your outer space? It doesn't mean you have to live in the mansion with $1 billion worth of furniture. What it means is find your own aesthetic. Find an aesthetic that actually brings you to a space of feeling open and pleased around it. It could be simplicity is your aesthetic. You know, white walls, spare Zen-like look is your aesthetic. But make some effort to decide what your aesthetic is. Pay attention to what pleases you and what doesn't please you in the world. Have objects around you that have some resonance of beauty for you and some deeper meaning for you, right? Put some conscious effort into not letting it be haphazard and keep it clean. There's an essential relationship to life and to your self-nurturing to feel you're in a space that comports with a healthy sense of the world and self and a healthy relationship with your own aesthetic. And it can be a lot of fun to just, create that aesthetic. It's a part of the playing in the world. So again, clothing is a way of self-nurturing if in fact you find it can be an expression of your real self and you're committed to not using clothing as just trying to hide out from the world, right? You've got to get in touch with your own psychological resonance of it. And if it comes from a negative place, and if you're not using an opportunity to, feel your way through clothing that has an aesthetic resonance with you that lifts your spirit. The exaggerated form of that, of course, is where you're unnurturing yourself by being obsessive about how good you look and how the clothing should be and, is it classy enough, etc. That's not self-nurturing. That's trying to present your idealized self so to get more nurtured in the world. You want to look for that sense of clothing that allows you to feel like I'm playing in the world. I'm a bit of a player. I'm having some fun with this. I feel comfortable. My energy, I got a different shift in energy if I wear this rather than this. It feels more of an up. And different clothing will do that for you. And that, seems to be organically represented your sense of spirit in the world rather than your need to have the world bow down before you and say you're the greatest. Okay, and then of course there's our beloved Mother Earth and the environment we're in, and what are you doing to nurture that? What are you doing to minimize your footprint, your carbon footprint, your toxic footprint, other people's toxic footprints? Are you being consciously aware of this element of being here? Are you allied with organizations, in this, assuming you have the time, allied with organizations, assisting organizations that are working to prevent the ravaging of the planet? We're losing species at the most phenomenal rate in human history. At the rate we're going, we'll have wiped out all species, and therefore we'll have wiped out all life in about 250 years. The rate of species decline. And the old saw that old species die off and new species get born is not being followed these days. The toxicity of the oceans, the toxicity of the planet have reached proportions where it's not allowed. The toxicity of our relationships. I just saw this horrible thing about this. I think it was Norway, this dolphin kill, Finland and Norway, annual dolphin kill. It's just disgusting on the most primitive of levels. And yet there we are, thinking that this is part of where we are in relationship to other species. Some of us thinking this is part of where we are in relation to other species. So mindfulness about the larger outer space we live in is in itself self-nurturing and satisfying. Okay, so write outer space in your notebook and, up to a half a dozen things that you can be aware of to improve your outer space and thereby be more self-nurturing in that regard. So you now have a set of lists and a set of directions and goals. And again, always do one at a time, move on what's possible. Don't overwhelm yourself. Do not create tension for yourself. This is about step by step, shifting your life and your vision, and overdoing it and grabbing for too much and then saying, I'm failing at it, is the least self-nurturing thing you can do. So look at what's easiest to do first and do that. Start enjoying that and then move on your list in other ways. There's an overriding sensibility I want to suggest. And when you approach the idea of self-nurturing, being creative in the world, being in such a way that you're in true flow and interaction and connectiveness with other people. Not that you're just alone in the world. You are in a world where you are literally connected and co-creating, and everything you do in response to other people feeds back to you, and it's all interrelated. So in that mindset that this is all happening, not just you alone in this empty space, but it's in this co-creation element. It's in that sense that you're in this great dance. You move this arm, the other person moves back this way. And so what you're really doing is sort of dancing with the universe in every one of these things that you're doing. And that's the play. And you're creating more connectiveness through your self-nurturing. So the statement I like that sums it up is both the role you play and the connectedness is, I have no obligation except to myself. And in nurturing myself, I nurture the world, and therefore any obligations I might have to the world. So I'll say that again, and then I'm going to give you the sentence too. I have no obligation except to myself, and in nurturing myself, I nurture the world, and therefore fulfill any obligations I might have to the world. Therefore, nurturing myself is the only meaningful thing to do in the world. I therefore commit to self-nurturing. So, one last exercise that I want you to do in terms of awareness exercise, and then I'm going to take you through a closing, graduating ceremony, a guided meditation ceremony. Okay, so that exercise is make a list, now that you've got your list of self-nurturing elements, make a list of the key obstacles that come up. What are the obstacles that come up that you can think of? Just in my obstacles. What's in the way of you being self-nurturing? Identify in any areas that come up. I can't do this, I'm stuck here, right? So make that list, and when you finish that list, what I want you to do is green light almost every element of it. In other words, see what turnaround you can do on it. And it doesn't mean you're going to green light everything today. It's, as I said before, you're going to focus on one thing at a time, and if there's an obstacle there, you're going to handle the obstacle in the green lighting way, meaning that I'm going to make it a creative adventure to accomplish this task rather than I can't do that, this is in the way. I'm going to creatively find a way to enjoy myself by positively moving forward in this direction. This is going to be a fun adventure for me to move forward in this rather than I can't, red light, can't go there. This will be fun to figure out how to do this, get this done.
Coming up next, you'll want to sit back and relax as Jay guides you through a powerful vision of your personal life mastery as a closing ceremony for this Life Mastery Basics course.
So to close this 12-part Life Mastery class, I'm going to take you through this guided meditation. Close your eyes, get comfortable. See yourself alone in some place out in nature that's really comforting and you're really feeling wonderfully, sweetly comfortable. Take a few breaths into it. Just see yourself in the woods, on the beach, in a meadow, top of a hill, wherever it is that you're drawn to feel, I feel really safe here. You're really safe and at peace here. Good. Okay. Take a few breaths. Now allow yourself just to feel lighter and lighter. You're there and you're just feeling really light. Feeling at peace and your body's feeling really light. And in fact, it's feeling so light that you sort of just really gently start just a little bit moving, floating upward. You float upward a little bit. See yourself floating upward. Then see yourself floating up a little bit higher so that you're at a treetop level, say. Your treetop level, and you're looking a little bit down on the ground. And float a higher so you're at what might be, even though you're in nature, tall building level. You're just floating up gently like you're in a balloon, floating up. You keep floating higher and higher and higher, and the ground is receding. And it just feels really safe and beautiful, like rising in a balloon. You float up to cloud level. And like an airplane moving up through the cloud, you just let yourself gently float through the cloud. You see the clouds around you. Up and up and up through the cloud. Just feels nice and sweet. And you come out into daylight again. And here in daylight is a floating, beautiful island. Even more beautiful than the floating mountains in Avatar. There's a floating island here. You're going to come up and you're landing on the shore of this island, and this crowd of wonderfully, colorfully dressed individuals with these glowing being looks about them come happily to greet you. And where you are is you've landed on an island of people who are completely awake. So this is a land of people who are completely awake. They've healed all their trauma. And they're wisdom people, and they're shamans, and they're phenomenal artists, and they live in great peace and loveliness and playfulness with each other. And they're highly educated, and they're extraordinarily healthy. They don't have any negativity about them. They have no fear about them. They've seen the bigger, diviner picture, the connectiveness. They live in it constantly. They're awake in it. They're all highly psychic and intuitive. The gods and goddesses, shamans, healers. Everyone's a healer. Everybody can heal, no matter what other activities. Okay? And they're celebrating you, and they're happy to see you. And they say, we have a special first venture for you. And they say, we're going to take you to meet your shaman, goddess, God's self. You're going to meet the person you are, you're becoming. Right? So they take you through the village and take you to a place, and you meet you. You meet who you are when you're completely free of the trauma. You're completely awake, alive, non-reactive. So look at your body language. Look at how you're dressed. Look at the strength you emit. Look at the qualities of the person you are. There. Look at your God, goddess self, your shaman self, how she or he presents. And this is who you're inevitably becoming. This is you liberated. So now, your goddess self says, come with me, because you represent a stage in my earlier life, but it's a phenomenally successful stage. It was the stage in which you started getting what you needed to get so you could be exactly where I am, and it's inevitable you're going to be here. And we're just basically one at different stages of time. This is your future. And you deserve a phenomenal pat on the back and for your commitment to being here, because that's the first step, to be here, to know that you want to get out of the way of your trauma self, and you're just going to make it happen, because you're committed to learning the tools to make it happen, and it's doable. So just come with me. And he leads you down back to the village, and she leads you back down to the village. And as you approach, you hear this phenomenal music. And people are dancing and singing, and the whole village center has been phenomenally decorated beautifully. And as people see you, there's signs up with your name on it. And as people see you, they're just cheering like crazy. And they come and grab you, and they lift you on their shoulders, and they carry you into the center of the center. And they give you a great, beautiful necklace, jeweled necklace, honoring your graduation. And they proceed to dine you extravagantly, and people stand up and tell you what they really appreciate about you, the gold you're starting to show, even more strongly, the true self they see in you. They're just celebrating the you that they can clearly see, because they're not thrown by any remnants of trauma or reactive behavior. They see right past that stuff to you, and they see the progress you've made. And they're just loving you and celebrating you and happy that you're coming into the eternal tribe. And they're dancing with you and for you, and you get up and dance, and you're just having a great time and feeling really, really, really honored and appreciated. Just let that go on for as long as it seems appropriate. Good. Let's get some feedback and questions now about what's happening, and then we'll give everybody a last set of reminders.
In the final segment, students share with Jay their experiences and thoughts about the ceremony and the teachings on self-nurturing, while Jay answers the kinds of questions that may have also arisen in your mind.
Okay, the only question I have is, sometimes I find myself thinking about nurturing and doing things for self, and I sometimes have thoughts like, why do you want to spend money on getting this for yourself or that? There's so much poverty and things happening in the world. Maybe shift focus a bit. I think I have a back and forth, how much I do for self versus participate in the community for those that really have very little.
So it's very common for there to be this sort of guilt, poverty consciousness that comes out of class differences from a structure so if you've got any kind of human sensibility and you're not a completely selfish being, you're thinking, oh, well, what about this? But real self-nurturing, when you really figure it out, when you really get down to the bottom of it, you're not going to be overspending on yourself. That's self-indulgence. What you're going to be spending on is those things that actually shift you to a place where you can be of higher service and in more service. You're not feeding your idealized self that I've got to have the bigger car, right? You're feeding something that in your program says, I'd like to learn this. This will expand my education. And with this greater learning, I'll automatically be of a different kind of richer service in the world, okay? So trust your knowing self. Be aware of the critic inside you that always wants to come up and sabotage you and make you small and make you feel guilty. You know, the Course in Miracles says the negative ego structure controls us most profoundly through guilt, through this idea of guilt, rather than we're innocent. Just what we saw is when we did the second class. We're innocent little kids who got mal-educated. And you can't say that to yourself often enough. So just ask yourself as you do this, is this in conformity with my self-nurturing program? And will I grow from this in a way that's going to help me and the world be more co-creative in creating a better world, right?
So I have a question about self-nurturing. When other people make a criticism of how I nurture myself, and I am not having the problem with the nurturing, yet others throughout my life, because of the dynamic that I set up with them, had a problem with how I was nurturing, to the point where one person specifically condemned the fact that I had an income stream. And when I lost that income stream through bankruptcy, it was really interesting that that person almost instantaneously over a 2 or 3 year period just drifted out of my life.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. So, you know, from past sharings that you've had, we already know your patterning had to do with a controlling and very not supportive parental figure, right? So you've got that mold in you, and like energy meets like energy. You pull these people in all the time because they're going to show up for you maybe more than others until you realize how to deal with them differently and shift your attitude. So the obvious one attitude shift is to know that people who are in that place, like your parent, are coming from a very disturbed place, and you don't want to give a crazy person authority over who you are, right? The second element that I hope you'll use from the class is nonviolent communication, where you speak to these people and you set your boundaries rather than what you did as a child, right? Rather than find the I'm going to avoid or try to get approval pattern of the child.
Usually I would sneak.
Sneaking is avoiding, yeah. So rather than do that and go, good, you're going to step forward now, right? And you're going to say, that's not acceptable behavior. I hear what you say, and I hear you feel, and here's how I feel about it. So I want to contract with you. My request is, I have a need to not have a repetitive pattern in my life of people coming to me to tell me they think they know better than my own knowingness, right? So I have a request for you. My request for you is that when you feel yourself needing to say something like this, you go away. You don't even open your mouth in saying it, right? You just take it someplace else, right? Because I don't want to have that experience with you. So if you want to have good experiences with me, you'll take that off the table, right?
That's good.
That's self-empowering use of nonviolent communication.
Okay.
That's my request to you.
All right.
Not judging the person, just saying this is where I'm coming from. Real clarity. Cool. Excellent question. So this concludes not only today's class, but the 12 classes in the Life Mastery Basics course. And I've created them with that title in mind. These are basic elements of mastering the realities of life that give us difficulty and opening to a different sense of life and a usually different experience of life. Much sweeter, much more grounded, much more easily flowing. And again, I've chosen tools I've learned over the years that I find the most effective. And I've tried to give you more tools than you're ever going to use so you feel you're in an abundant world and you can use that tool in the moment that works best for you, not that you have to drive yourself to do it all, but you find your way to it. And, you know, I can provide the tools and encourage you to play with them and green light them. Just make it the great adventure of your life to heal your traumatized self and learn that the only great adventure in life is not getting the world to approve you, but learning to be in your true self and expressing that, doing that creative dance in the world with the part of yourself you didn't create but has this phenomenal potential and subtleties and range you have not yet likely really even begun to explore, the range of self and the capacities you might have. So, you know, find something, it would be my encouragement. Find a starting place, work with it, enjoy it, make it fun, green light it. You know, and write me the results. Keep me informed about the results. So I appreciate your degree you've participated, certainly those in the class, those beyond the class room who are listening or watching. And I wish you a great self-discovery life. And I want to remind you that there's 2 separate classes you might be interested in. For the women, there's 2 separate classes on what women need to know about men, and for the men, there's a course on what men need to know about women. So have a great day, have a great life. If we're lucky to meet, I'll see you some other time. Bye.
If you are interested in an appointment with Jay, you can email him at jlevincoaching@gmail.com or contact him directly at jlevin.com. The following are testimonials from students who completed Jay Levin's course on Life Mastery Basics.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm a cameraman, and I am sitting here in front of you because on my first day coming in to film Jay, I was very surprised to be a part of what was happening. I was not expecting the shoot that I had walked in on. And after filming Jay for a day, I realized that what he was talking about had been something that I had maybe been searching for a long time, and was very surprised and felt very excited that what I had walked in on and became a part of was something that I would offer up to my family and friends and even my peers. I'm 28 years old, and the first thought that came to my mind was how my buddies could use this skill set to improve and better their own lives. So as I was thinking, standing behind the camera, I spoke up to Jay and felt, I was so excited about what he was talking about that he decided to put me in front to give a small testimonial, because I really felt it was necessary to let the audience know how important and groundbreaking these life skills are. Just sit back for a moment and think about your own life and your relationships. And I think what Jay is touching upon is very much the essence of community and family and friendship, and I would highly recommend it to anyone.
One of the things about this course is that it's called Basics of Life Mastery. And I think one of the things that course provides is giving practical tools that can be applied in real life situations so that we can move out of sort of the stance self, move out of the traumatized self, and really make deliberate progress and concrete progress. So I think the tools are one of the most important things, that we're actually learning skills, sets to work with another human being, to actually live and come from a very creative way and fun way of living in life. It's not like a chore. It really makes it more of this engaged way of being in the world. I think the course is extremely valuable no matter whether someone feels extremely skilled in this kind of work. I think it's still, there's always something to be learned, because the moment we think that we've mastered it, we stop learning, we stop growing, and there's always, I think, room to grow. I would say nonviolent communication and also the class on finances and relationships, those are probably the most valuable for me. And learning how to just be with a human being more on a really authentic, open, sharing level where it's very, very connected. No hiding, no gaming, really one person coming to another from the soul level.
Yes, I am feeling some shifts, more shifts of connection with people, family members. I've noticed myself be a bit more empathic than usual, than my usual stance. So I've done a little bit less of that in the last couple of days. I'm a bit more empathic, more communicating. And also I'm noticing a lot more natural bubbling of joy that's coming forward. Well, I found the course meaningful personally, first of all, in the explanation of how we as humans develop our trauma self and how we act from this trauma self. I found that I have a deeper understanding of how I'm acting and reacting, so I find that tremendously valuable. Another thing that's been clearer is how I am in relationships in terms of codependency, i.e., am I telling the truth and am I backing myself up and holding my own when I'm in relations with people? So that's coming up for heightened awareness. Another thing that's coming up from the course is the understanding that the frustration I was feeling in the past few months is me having a very profound need to express myself in many areas that I haven't been very internal.
The things that I've learned in this course that are already affecting my life are as follows. The value of the relationship, the value of the non-violent communication, honoring myself more and realizing that I don't have to commit a codependent dance with people, that just reaffirming things that I already knew and anchoring in, hopefully, at least the foundation for nonviolent communication, so I don't get into, aggressive arguments with people anymore. I'd like to do a couple of the courses again, a couple of the sessions again, like relationships and the nonviolent again, and also the self-nurturing. I'd like to do that. I would say whether you've done a lot of work on yourself or whether you've done almost no work on yourself, this is a good point to stop and take a look at how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, how you walk through your day-to-day life, whether you go with blinders on or whether you have a full 360-degree view. I would say that this is a key mastery to starting that journey and continuing forward so you can be your full potential. I would say that that's a key point. And if you don't want to, no one's going to hold anything up to you and push you. You have to take the first step yourself.